My dear students, welcome to LMS portal. I am G.L.N. Prasad, lecturer in zoology, Government Degree College, Kalyan Durg. In this class, let us try to focus on the basic principles of feed. Before going into the lesson, let me list out the objectives of this session. The learning objectives of this session is we are going to learn about the definition of the feed along with the significance of feed, because we know that there are different varieties of feed like proteins, carbohydrates, water, energy, lipids, minerals, vitamins, and there are many subtypes also like roughage, dry roughage, moisture roughage, concentrates, mixtures, like that. We are going to list out the significance of the feed also in this class. That means we are going to describe the specific role of a particular feed in the cattle industry. And at the end, we are going to describe the characteristic features and composition of the feed. So, these are the main learning objectives of today's session. Yield in the dairy industry is influenced by the feed. Here we have to remember that dairy industry is meant for profit and also for maintenance of public health profile. These two are the objectives of the dairy industry. One is earning of profits, second one is maintenance of public health profile. Undoubtedly, the feed which we are going to supply to the cattle is essentially influencing the different parameters of the dairy industry, and feed is responsible for the maintenance of quality of life, and milk yield and meat yield is also influenced by feed quality, and growth is directly proportional to the feed, because normally the nutrients supply energy that is needed for the proper growth of the body, and for the maintenance of pregnancy also the feed is required. So, because all these parameters are influenced by the feed, undoubtedly the feed is going to influence the dimensions and dynamics of the cattle industry, that means dairy industry. So, we have to maintain a very good quality of the feed. Then, what are the characteristic features of the feed? What should be the nature of the feed? Feed should have a wonderful calorific value. That is very important. Unless it has calorific value, you can't call it as a feed. And apart from this calorific value, the feed should not be toxic. It should not be toxic, however calorific value it may have. If it is toxic, it is going to damage the vital organs of the cattle. In such case, it may lead to the mortality of the cattle. And the feed should contain all the essential nutrients like carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, vitamins, minerals, water, etc. And it should be easily digestible. If the feed has much calorific value but it is very difficult for the cattle to digest the same stuff, it should not be preferred. And it should be available locally, because much of the investment in the cattle industry is diverted towards providing the nutrient ration. As a result, if you go for locally available foodstuff, it will be reducing the cost of the feed. And apart from that, it should be palatable, because the feed may be having all the qualities which I mentioned now. It is not toxic and it may contain all the essential nutrients, and it may be easily digestible, and it is also locally available. But if it is not tasty, if it is not palatable, the cattle will not enjoy the delicacy, will not enjoy that foodstuff. And you remember, feeding table should not be kept empty at any point of time, because whenever cattle feel like feeding themselves, they will come to the table and they will search for the food. In such cases, the feeding bowl, the feeding container, the feeding table should be ready with the ingredients, should be ready with the feed. And apart from feed, fresh water should also be supplied or provided to the cattle. Feed determines the performance of cow. That means the performance level of cow is directly proportional to the feed. The cattle should not be overnourished and the cattle should not be undernourished. And the metabolizable part of the feed is utilized by the cattle for their sustenance. This is very important. If the nutrients that are present in the feed, they don't enter into the metabolic activities, they don't enter into the metabolic biochemical cycles, that nutrient will go waste. It can't be metabolized. So only the metabolizable part of the feed can be utilized by the cattle for their general maintenance. And this is also applicable for energy. Only metabolizable energy that is present in the digested food will be available for the sustenance of the cattle. And here you see the definition of this metabolizable energy. This is the energy remaining in the digested foodstuffs after the loss in fecal matter, urine, gases and body heat. I will try to elaborate this at the appropriate time. Smorgasbord is nothing but the feeding material that is provided to the cattle. It's just like menu. Whenever you go to the hotel, you will be given a menu by server. It is like that. The menu contains the list of nutrients which you are going to eat. Like that, smorgasbord is nothing but a nutrient stuff that is being provided to the cattle. Water, you know the significance of water. Energy, this is also one of the important feed, because no doubt energy in the view of majority people, it is the character of the feed rather than feed by itself. But here you consider energy as a separate type of feed. Protein, fiber, vitamins, minerals. If you take proteins, you know that proteins are called building blocks of the body. Unless the cattle is supplied with the necessary proteins, they can't synthesize, they can't construct their own body plan. Because protein is required for structural activities and also functional activities. Various proteins are found in horns and hooves. For example, if you take keratin, keratin is the protein that is present in the horn and hoof of cattle. Like that, casein is the milk protein. That means if you don't supply these proteins, the exoskeletal structures and also the major product of dairy, namely milk, will not be properly synthesized. This protein is categorized into crude protein, and this crude protein will be degraded in the rumen. We know very well that cattle are ruminants. They regurgitate, they chew the material, and in the rumen the microbial digestion occurs, and the microbes will digest the protein into the various nitrogenous products. Ultimately, the nitrogen will also be released. Undegraded dietary nitrogen is also present in the protein. That means the nitrogen will not be liberated from such proteins. Optimum balance between this UDP and RDP, that means undigested protein, rumen digested protein, should hit a balance, should be moderate in the diet. And there are certain other category of proteins called bypass proteins, and these are the proteins that escape, that bypass the microbial digestion in the rumen. The proteins that will escape without being digested by the ruminant bacteria, ruminant microbes, are called bypass proteins. And what is the significance of proteins? Proteins act as building blocks of the body, and they are the components of muscles, skin, organs and fetus. And the protein called casein is responsible for the synthesis of milk, and they are also responsible for repairing the damage done to the cells or tissues or organs. And water, what is the important component in the feed? Body of a dairy cow constitutes nearly 75% of water, and water constitutes 87% of milk. That means 87% of milk is made up of water. And we know the role of water. Water is the universal solvent, and it is the medium for many metabolic activities, and it has got a structural and functional role, and it is also responsible for regulating the body temperature. And water plays a crucial role in waste disposal. So water should be provided in required quantities. And energy plays a vital role in milk production and maintenance of pregnancy. Depending on the energy required, the feed is rationed. The ration of the feed, the ration of the ingredients that are present in the feed will be fixed depending on the energy available in that particular feed. And the fiber, this is very crucial in the feed. And of course, roughage, this is nothing but the roughage, fiber is nothing but the roughage. And it is helpful in the process of regurgitation and chewing, because this roughage or fiber, this is responsible for the mobility of the entire digestive tract. So this roughage or fiber is responsible for peristaltic movement and also for antiperistaltic movement and also for rumination, that means regurgitation. The process of rumination regulates the sudden fluctuations in acidity of the rumen. This is very, very crucial, because unless there is rumination, there will be major fluctuations in the rumen of the cattle. Energy is quantitatively the major nutrient required by dairy cattle after water. And carbohydrates form the major source of energy for dairy cattle because they are much cheaper. How do you calculate the gross energy? The total energy trapped in the feed is called gross energy, and it should be measured after complete oxidation. After all the foodstuffs undergo the process of oxidation in the system, then you have to measure the available gross energy, and the heat produced is the parameter of measurement. Digestible energy means gross energy minus fecal loss. Gross energy minus the fecal loss, that means excretory loss, constitute the digestible energy. And here you remember, my dear friends, energy utilized in the production of methane in the rumen in cattle is mere waste. And you know pretty well that the cattle produce the greater quantities of methane, and the energy that is utilized in this process of production of methane is a mere waste, and it has to be expelled out. The cattle can't retain methane in its stomach. It may die due to excess production of methane. So it has to be belched out, it has to be expelled out. And coming to the vitamins, nearly 15 varieties of vitamins are required. 15 varieties of vitamins are required for cattle, and they have multiple uses. They have got multiple uses. And they act as cofactors. They are responsible for energy release, and the vitamins are also responsible for milk production, and the vitamins are also responsible for the formation of bone and teeth, because you know that vitamin D is very much essential for calcium metabolism, and calcium is the major ingredient in the bone and teeth. And vitamins are also responsible for boosting up the immunity of the cattle. That means for disease resistance. Minerals. The difference between minerals and vitamins. Vitamins are the organic compounds, whereas minerals are the inorganic elements. And coming to the role of minerals, minerals are very much crucial for milk production. For example, if you take calcium, calcium is responsible for milk production and also bone formation, teeth formation, and also for blood coagulation. And sodium and potassium minerals are responsible for nerve impulse transmission. So like that, minerals play a variety of role in the life of a cattle. And what is the requirement? The feed requirement of animal is calculated on dry matter basis. On average, dairy animals consume 3 to 4 kgs of dry matter per 100 kg of body weight. You remember this requirement. And coming to precautions, you should not change the diet suddenly. Sudden change in the diet should be avoided. It is also true in case of human being, but it is more relevant in case of cattle, because they are animals. They can't be conditioned so easily. They can't be tuned so easily. If you suddenly change the components of the feed that you are going to supply to the cattle, it will definitely disturb the gastrointestinal tract. So, the feed formulation or feed should not be drastically changed. And the mineral loss should not be entertained. You have to cope up. That means you should create such a condition for a cattle. They should cope up with the mineral loss. The animal should be supplemented with 70 to 100 grams of mineral mixture daily to avoid this mineral loss or mineral depletion. A piece of common salt should also be placed in manger. Normally, whenever you get dehydrated, you will be taking oral rehydration solution, ORS solution. Like that, you try to provide the minerals that are dissolved in the water to the cattle. And ultimately, both over and underfeeding should be avoided. Feeding containers should be cleaned regularly, otherwise infections may spread. And 1 kg concentrate mixture is to be given to yield 2 liters of milk. So, this is about the basic principles of the feed. So, in this class, we have learned about the significance of the feed, definitions of the feed, types of feed, like proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, water, minerals, vitamins, roughage, like that. And we have also taken certain precautions to maintain balanced diet. So, that is about today's class. And at the outset, I thank one and all, and also my sincere thanks to CCF Andhra Pradesh and our principal GDC Kalyan Durg and Dr. Harish Babu, lecturer in zoology, GDC Penugonda. He has provided the required material for me. So, thank you one and all.